Hello, my name is Craig Otto. I'm a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. Today, we're going to talk about project management, and I'm going to give some key points. You may have seen previous Sensei key points on facilitating meetings. I highly encourage you to check that one out if you haven't already. And this one today will be all about project management, just some simple things in terms of things to remember when documenting things and how to work the projects in maybe the most effective manner. And so I just want to give some quick key points on how to be successful with projects. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing is about right-sized reporting. Now, why is right-sized reporting, why is that important? Well, first of all, you want to make sure that you give clarity for your audience. Not every stakeholder needs or wants a deep technical understanding. Tailoring the depth of the report ensures your message lands clearly. Efficiency is also important. Too much detail can overwhelm and distract from the key takeaways. At the same time, too little can raise questions about the credibility of your presentation. You want to make sure that there's good relevance, make sure that it aligns with the decision-making needs of your audience, everything that you're presenting, and whether it's with the executives in terms of what they need, or if it's down to the tactical team needs, you want to make sure that it's relative to the audience that you're presenting your information to. Now, how do we do this well? So the first thing we need to do is to make sure that we know our audience. What do they care about? What actions will they take based on the information you're providing? The other important piece is to use layers. What that means is you present maybe high-level results first, and then drill down information next for details, things like dashboards and appendices and so forth. Highlight the impacts. What that means is focus on the business outcome, the improvement delta, and the performance improvement that you get from your results. Keep the technical methods in the background unless it's specifically relevant. And of course, be transparent but concise. Summarize your assumptions, make sure you have good data quality, and give confidence in your findings without going overboard. The next thing is key points, and even more than that, lots of visuals, pictures, and ideally less words is better. And what I mean by that is stick to your key points only. You don't want to drown out drown out the key points with other information. So you want to focus on what's changed, why it matters, and how it'll be done. Keep in mind, though, that you want to keep it somewhat brief in terms of how it can be done. And then talk about what the next steps are. Use bullet points, not paragraphs. And the other thing is lots of pictures. Visuals are extremely important. Show before and after charts and pictures, process maps, screenshots of some of the tools that you've used or dashboards, icons, infographics. Make sure every visual tells a story or shows the progress over time. And just a little tip to go with that, I always want to show the historical performance, and a lot of times you can do that with a line chart of in the last several months, but anytime you can show those trends visibly, it takes a lot, it's just that much more powerful compared to trying to write words. Less words, more meaning. Aim for that concise, plain language approach. Try to eliminate the jargon unless the audience understands it, and let the visuals do that heavy lifting. Just think about it in terms of tweeting, and now it's called X, but if it doesn't fit on a slide within 10 seconds, you're able to visibly read and see it, it's probably too long. Keep it short and to the point. And I'll even give some more bonus tips on this because I do think it's extremely important. One is to use a consistent format. And what I mean by that is however you present out to your organization in a continuous improvement manner, whether all the reports are done this way, that's important. Because if an executive gets used to seeing an A3 and understands how to use it, the same as with all the organization, the communication and learning happens so much faster. because there's not that learning curve of reading the report. So if you stick with A3s, one pagers, slide decks, whatever it is that you use, it's important to make sure people are trained on it and use that consistently. And then the next thing I think is important is to highlight the wins visually. So green arrows are good, red arrows are bad. Simple key process indicators. Just keep it simple and have people understand whether you're winning or losing at a glance. And then, of course, last but not least, celebrate the teams and the ownership of the team. It's important to have photos. Show photos of the people involved. Get quotes from the people involved. That's really how you get buy-in from people to, really show that ownership and to take pride in what they've done and to take pride in sharing that what they've done. All right, the next key point is one need flow. As you know, or maybe not, you don't know, one piece flow in like the manufacturing environment is the most efficient and most productive way to process almost all things. And when you go outside of manufacturing, even when you get into service and just different ways that you support even production, it's not quite as obvious one piece flow because you may not have something physical, but many times you do have tasks. And those tasks, you can't work on everything at once. A lot of people think that multitasking is efficient or is a good thing. Actually, multitasking is a terrible thing because you spend a lot of your resources and time working on so many different things and nothing actually gets done. So let's talk a little bit about why one need flow is important. First of all, the clarity of it is important. You want to clarify that purpose. Everyone works, with the same understanding and the same goal, and this eliminates misalignment and conflicting priorities. It really works to reduce rework because of unclear requirements. So when everyone understands the why, the how becomes more focused and efficient, if that makes sense. So let's talk about smooth handoffs. Again, it's all about flow, right? One need flow. So you have the need, you complete the task, you do the delivery, and it's done, right? It reduces the friction between the teams and the functions, and you're preventing tasks from stalling out midstream due to unclear ownership. It's just that smooth transition because it flows. The next one's quality and consistency. Really, you're focusing on one thing at a time, a single need at a time, and that leads to deeper attention to the task as well as better outcomes. So it enables a higher standard of performance as well as fewer shortcuts. Excellence really comes from the depth, right? Not multitasking across multiple conflicting needs, but to really focus on something with all of your brain power and all of your excellence. And of course, faster and leaner execution. When you do one need flow, you have less switching between the priorities. You're also enabling flow for resource efficiency. In other words, there's no setup of resources. There's no switching your brain around to focus from one thing to the next. It just all is very efficient and it flows. And it helps that it identifies and removes the bottlenecks in the delivery of the task. How do you put this one need flow into practice? Well, first you have to start with a clear definition of the need. That's like your problem statement and or your business goal. Then you want to limit that work in process. It's just like in a production environment, inventory is bad. The same thing, if you have too many tasks, that's like inventory. That's WIP. Call that work in process. You want to minimize that. You want to only have a couple things that you're working on because then you can do those things with excellence. The more things you take on, the less you're able to focus and get done with a quality effort. Align all contributors. So you want to keep the same need through all the different meetings, the briefings, and it just keeps everyone on track until that thing is done. And then you want to visualize the flow. That's where your Kanban boards can come in. You can have swim lanes, just different ways of even like office Kanban of tasks. There's just a lot of opportunities there to visualize the one need flow as well. And then, of course, track it to completion, not just handoff to handoff. Make sure that from start to finish, you're able to see it through. All right, the next key point is right-sized scoping. So with right-size scoping, we want to know why is that important to predict project success. So first of all, it focuses on what matters. And in this case, it helps the team avoid trying to take on everything, trying to boil the ocean. It helps prioritize those core outcomes over maybe the nice to haves. And it helps align the stakeholders around what will actually be delivered and what won't. It enables faster delivery. So things like smaller, clearer scopes are easier to execute and even turn around in an iterative approach. It reduces your risk of long-term delays and loss of momentum, and encourages more short cycles of continuous improvement, delivery, learning, and so forth. And honestly, in my experience, small projects rarely fail. It's actually the bigger projects that are large, very vague. Those are the ones that truly fail. So that's why I think right-size scoping is one of the keys to project success. Okay, so next would be improving resource planning. Obviously, it's easier to estimate your effort for cost and capacity. Teams can commit with that greater confidence that they're going to be successful, and it reduces the overall allocation as well as minimizes burnout. Um, it simplifies stakeholder communication, so a clear scope equals easier to explain and easier to track the value. There's less room for scope creep, so you have less moving targets, and of course, it builds trust through that clear expectations and outcomes. Obviously, if you're successful and it's small in scope and there's lots of iterative improvements, then that boosts team morale, and teams can see that visible progress and wins, and it keeps that stress level down. It eliminates confusion about priorities and encourages that culture of delivery and accountability. Really drives that integrity home. So if I had to put it into a checklist, um, again, just going back, just making sure you have a problem that's clearly identified. Make sure that it's scoped within 2 to 6 weeks of start to finish. Make sure that the outcomes are measurable so you know that you're winning or losing. Keep your dependencies limited and known. And then make sure that the work is divisible into meaningful chunks so that you can keep working that for success. And you can say clearly what is in and what is out of your scope. All right, the next one is to sell the win continuously. And so that is very important, especially from an operational excellence journey, not just for individual projects, but the journey itself. Each project serves as a win, hopefully. Really, why that is because you want it to build that credibility and trust, which means you're regularly showing results, kind of reinforcing that continuous improvement is not just extra work, right? It's real value, and it makes leadership more likely to fund and support the future initiatives. It keeps that cultural momentum going. In other words, you're sharing wins, building that belief in the process, and it encourages others to kind of adopt that OpEx, continuous improvement thinking. And then people want to be a part of what's working, right? Everyone wants to be on a winning team. And so the more you can share those success stories, it inspires action. You want to protect yourself as well against regression. So organizations over time naturally kind of revert back to old habits. And by continuously sharing this communication, it keeps improvement visible and alive. And so selling success reminds teams why the change was worth it. And it makes it a lot harder for us to regress back when we're constantly sharing these new things, these new wins to keep our organization moving forward. It also secures stakeholder buy-in. So in other words, we're selling the value, not just the effort. It ensures that we have continued support from leadership and from the partners that support the effort. It keeps continuous improvement tied to the strategic goals and our real business outcomes. So how do we keep selling our operational excellence success? Well, first of all, you want to keep showing in the metrics that you're seeing the action and the results. So when you have successful metrics demonstrating the success of your transformation, that is super powerful. Not to mention, you want to be able to tell the stories, right? And not just the stats. You want to highlight the people, make it personal, make the transformation personable, and show the people who are a part of it and the processes and the teams that have improved your processes. Use quotes from them, testimonials, use pictures that'll bring the story to life. It's very important. Make it a routine. So selling yourself needs to be a routine. Maybe that you do as a part of your business team meetings, maybe part of a newsletter, town halls, staff meetings. Just always creating that win of the week or that spotlight on a team. And that rhythm really drives home selling the OPEX program and keeps it alive. And it's also important to use multiple channels, whether that's blogs, dashboards, whiteboards, screensavers, whatever people pay attention to. Don't rely on just a single report or a showcase. Get it out there in multiple channels and allow that information to spread. Reflect, recognize, and repeat. So celebrate the contributors and the results, and the recognition will then drive adoption. And it'll show that CI just isn't a project, but it's a way that we do business. It's a way that we do work. All right, next we're going to talk about making sure that the savings analysis is thorough. So why is that important? Why is your savings analysis important? Well, you want to make sure that you're demonstrating a return on investment. And again, it kind of goes into the last bullet of selling yourself, but clear savings data shows that continuous improvement just isn't busy work, right? It's not just something additional that we do with our jobs because we have to, but it drives returns for our business. And it helps justify that time and the resources and the involvement. It builds credibility with leadership. So executives, they want to see the numbers, not just the effort. Be thorough and well documented with your savings. Create a confidence in your program. Also enables better decision making. So when you have that quantified impact, it helps the teams prioritize which improvements do we need to scale, which improvements we need to repeat, which ones do we need to stop. And that supports our data-driven resource planning. Driving recognition and the momentum, right? Clear results make it easier to recognize the contributors, and it highlights the successful methods. Visible wins attracts others to the CI OPEX process, and it creates that natural pool effect, that pool system. All right, so what thorough savings methods, what does that look like? And so the first thing I would say is quantify the hard savings if applicable or possible, right? Your cost reductions, which might be in labor, material, even waste. It could be time savings, and that could be converted into capacity or dollar values. Soft savings. Of course, soft savings are also equally important, but that might be improving the customer experience, right? That's super valuable, hard to quantify. That's why it's soft savings. Reducing the risk of error, right? And reducing your error rate, obviously super important. And faster delivery and service cycles, also very important for soft savings. You want to use clear and relatable terms, right? Like fewer complaints, less waiting, more accurate billing. Those might be different examples of what you could capture for soft savings. And then, of course, validate the assumptions. So you want to be transparent with how you're calculating savings, including baseline data and clarifying whether the results are kind of like a one-time thing or ongoing. If you need more information on this, I do have a video out there that I talk specifically about hard and soft savings examples and gets a little bit more detail if you need some more. And again, the last point I want to make here is it's important to tie back to the strategic goals, right? Show how the savings supports the bigger priorities, whether it's growth in your business, efficiency, quality. Use that language of the leadership to help understand the values. All right, the next key point is showing alignment. Let's talk about why that's important. So, first of all, it drives strategic impact. And what I mean by that, projects that align with business goals, those contribute to outcomes that matter, like growth and efficiency and customer satisfaction or even compliance. So this turns continuous improvement from a local optimization into organizational progress, right? It's on a whole different level beyond just a program. Securing leadership support. So leaders fund and back what they see as mission critical. So when you tie a project to the stated business objectives, you're speaking their language. Keeping the teams focused. So the alignment prevents teams from drifting into that nice to have territory. It provides a clear filter for prioritization. Does this serve as a key business goal? And of course, we want to make our wins more meaningful, where the achievements aren't just improvements, they're progress against real targets, and it helps teams see that bigger picture and feel their work matters. So let's talk about how to show that business alignment. You want to link again to those strategic priorities, kind of map everything out to the business objectives, whether that's reducing customer churn, increasing margins, scaling efficiency. Next thing you want to make sure you do is use that language of the business, translate those technical or operational terms into those value focused terms, show that the metrics matter, right? Use the key process indicators that the business already tracks, not just the project level ones. And then tie the department or functional goals to that overall impact. Show how the project supports both local and enterprise goals, and it helps gain that support from multiple stakeholders. All right, so relationships matter. Um, why is this so important? Well, people drive improvement, not just processes. Real change happens through behaviors, habits, and collaborations. So you need trust in order to get buy-in, in order to share that constancy of purpose, none of which of these things are built through announcements or emails. You want to make sure that the change is emotional and social. So people need to feel heard, respected, and a part of the journey. And strong relationships create a safety for honest feedback as well as experimentation. You want to be able to influence these face to face interactions. So, emails, they may inform, they may get conversations going, right? But the actual change needs to happen out where the work is done. Culture shifts when leaders model that behavior and engage personally, not just sending updates, but human interactions out where the work is done. All right. So, and again, I want to touch on this. Emails, a lot of people like to do emails when communicating things. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for email, but there's a lot of times that it fails. And the reasons are it actually creates a lack of an engagement where people ignore or maybe even misunderstand messages. There's no dialogue, so you can't address concerns or even recognize any resistance. Everything kind of feels top down, so there's no ownership there, and it doesn't build that connection. So it kind of weakens that team momentum. So really, I really caution email as you're trying to change or transform culture, because email is it's not going to get you where you need to go. The relationships on the floor or where the work is done is really where you need to be as a leader and as a continuous improvement change agent. All right, so instead of the emails and not doing the relationship, here's some things that you can do. So lead through relationships, build that trust before pushing the change. Spend time with the teams, listen more than you talk, and then communicate in layers. Use email for consistency, but then follow up with conversation, one on ones, huddles, team stand ups. Repeat those key messages often and then in different formats. Model the culture that you want. Show operational excellence through your own actions. Be reliable. Be curious. Be an owner, right? Show the ownership. People follow what they see, not what they read. Engage the influencers. So identify the respected team members and then involve them early. Culture change spreads faster peer to peer than top down. And then something to think about, little quote, you don't drive cultural transformation with a memo, you drive it through trust, time, and everyday actions. All right, so that will conclude all of the key points for project management. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe my channel. Thank you for your time and attention, and we'll see you next time.